Guys who married bridezillas, what happened after the wedding? Story 1. My coworker married a crazy bridezilla. I'll try to just hit the bullet points of what happened leading up to, during, and after the wedding, but it's still a lot. The moment he proposed, she lost her libido. According to him, she also basically stopped acting like the woman he fell in love with and started acting like her real self, which was bat poop crazy. A week after he proposed, she quit her job because her full-time job was now planning the wedding. The wedding was horrible. I'm getting there. She had a fight with his mother because the bride demanded the groom's mom pay for half the wedding, but got zero input and wasn't allowed to contribute to the guest list, which was 95% the bride's family and friends. Bride, who was 30 years old, subsequently egged her future mother-in-law's house. When the bride and groom had a spat about the egging, he went to work the next day and she shaved her head and sent him a video of her screaming and sobbing as she buzzed her hair off in the bathroom. I worked with him. He showed me the video when he said he had to leave, and I strongly urged him to have her assessed by a psychiatrist. He made a dumb joke about how doing it with a crazy girl is the best kind, and I pitied him. Wedding was in a pool clubhouse in summer. It was much too small for the 150-plus people they invited. Someone forgot to turn the AC on until after the place was packed. A lifeguard showed up in a swimsuit to turn it on, but it did little given it was already sweltering. 2 rows of chairs in the clubhouse were ribboned off with reserved signs on them, so no one sat in them. They were later occupied by the 6 seated bridesmaids, leaving about a dozen chairs open once the wedding started. The one groomsman stood by the groom and didn't sit. Elderly people were left standing or reduced to sitting on the floor, as there was no way to get to the chairs once the ceremony started. Bride showed up 90 minutes late, having been unhappy with her hair, wig, and makeup, so she took it all off and did it herself. So all the guests are standing for the 1.5 hours waiting for her. Groom was literally standing at the altar sweating his butt off in a wool suit in the South's high summer and was clearly not sure if she would show up. He looked like he felt sick. When the bride showed up, she burst into the clubhouse, marched down the aisle, and snapped at the officiant to hurry up and get started. During the prayer, while the religious groom had his head bowed, she turned to wave at everyone. I don't pray, so I was looking up. Then she told her mother to go get her some water. She drank a bottle of water during the prayer and kept grinning and waving at people in attendance, paying zero mind to her groom in front of her. When the ceremony was over, tables were crammed into the clubhouse, and apparently only family and immediate friends of the bride had seats at tables. The rest of us were going to be standing outside during the reception. So I didn't see a dance, a speech, the cake cut, nothing. The food was served outside in the southern U.S. July heat with bugs everywhere. The bride made the groom go get her food over and over. He meekly stood in line with the other 150 people until people insisted. He went to sit and let them get the food. Nope, she told him to get the food, so he said he had to be the one to get her food. She never left her table, never greeted any of her guests. Apparently they had a massive fight as they were leaving the following day for the honeymoon, the bride laying all the failures of the wedding she planned at his and his mom's feet. She threw his luggage out of the car and tried to drive to the airport by herself, but he had their tickets and jumped on the hood to stop her from driving off in his car. He got fired about a month after the wedding because he kept showing up late, leaving early, and leaving in the middle of the day, usually because she called him with some crisis. 1 year after the wedding, I got a thank you note for my wedding gift, which was signed by just the bride, with a note that said, "As you may have heard, Ryan and I have had a bumpy start in our first year as a married couple, and we are separated now. Thanks for the lovely gift." They divorced a couple months later. Somehow I'm angrier at other people for enabling her behavior than I am at her for being a human pile of poop. Story 2. A bit of a change-up, not a bridezilla, but a groomzilla. A friend of my father was remarrying. It was both his and the bride's second time around, both in their early 40s, and an arranged marriage. Think Indian, Orthodox, Muslim stuff. The guy was an utter groomzilla. He demanded that every event be at top-notch hotels with obscenely expensive catering and hired string quartets and whatnot for the entertainment, mostly paid out of the bride's family's pocket, I might add. The parties on the nights leading up to the main wedding event were opportunity enough for him to make a rather public butt of himself, talking at the top of his voice and showboating the entire time. But the kicker came the next day, when the bride was missing from her own wedding's reception. Obviously, it was very odd and conspicuous, and the few relatives from her side made some non-committal excuses about her not feeling well, etc. Turns out, this fricker had divorced the poor woman right after he'd had his wedding night fun. He said that he didn't like her enough, and that's an almost literal quote. So he gave her the triple divorce thing, and that was it. The marriage was officially over before the festivities even ended. At least he got the dog. Wouldn't want the dog to be with someone like that lady. Courthouse weddings are the best. Ours was done in 30 minutes, and then we had Cajun food and a roll in the hay. It was nice not being so tired from wedding prep and doings that you just felt like spending the honeymoon sleeping. One of my mom's cousins married a groomzilla. They divorced after 3 months because he was beating her. Look, you get one as a freebie. That's it. I knew a couple who spent $25,000 on a wedding despite having 3 kids and still living with the bride's parents. The bride had a very specific vision in mind and didn't care how much it cost. They divorced a year later when she cheated on him. The most expensive wedding I've been to ever was in October a few years ago. They were divorced by that Christmas, and for 6 of the intervening weeks, they were on their honeymoon. I'm a pretty chill person, but I'd probably be having a meltdown with all of those issues too. Wow. She had all the reason in the world to go nuclear on them. I hope she was able to get some of her money back. Dang. I mean, they always plan for something to go wrong, but that's a catastrophe. In my opinion, she's well within her right to go ape poop at all that. I had 4 meltdowns. My venue canceled on me, leaving me 3 months to find a new one. We ordered and paid for the groomsmen's suit rentals. One guy asked if he could wear something similar, then went out and bought it after I said no. My crazy grandma was trying to wear a shimmery white and gold dress. My wedding dress was gold and shimmery. My husband's father just randomly brought his uncle, that we've never met, to a 25-person wedding. I felt like a total bridezilla in those moments, but felt justified after. I tell clients all the time, people can change, they just generally don't. Man, I almost had respect for her parents, but calling the day after sounds like they waited on purpose. The fact that you were willing to do that to start with and call it the best decision ever means you couldn't ever have been a bridezilla. Story 3. I was called the bridezilla. After getting back with my ex-boyfriend I broke up with from high school, his parents got into his head that he should propose. His parents got married at the age of 19, and they thought that since they were 19, we should follow in their footsteps. We were only back together for over 1 month at that point. Nothing against anyone that married young or married suddenly. He proposed. I was excited because this is supposed to be an important moment in my life, and I can plan the beautiful wedding I always dreamed of. I immediately started to look at venues since we had 10 months to plan. His mom complained to everyone behind my back that I was planning too soon. His family are strict Catholics, so when I said I didn't want to have a mass for our wedding, they made sure the priest talked to me to convince me to change my mind. When I planned to go wedding dress shopping, she complained again about how I was doing it too soon, 8 months out from the wedding, and then she brought some of her kids without asking me. On top of that, I invited a mutual friend of ours, and I got a text from that friend on my way to the bridal shop asking if she could bring her kids, because my fiance's mom told her to. His mom also got mad at me for not including all 7 of her daughters in the wedding party. Whenever I tried to plan wedding stuff with my fiance, he couldn't handle it because planning the proposal took too much energy out of him. That lasted a few months. Whenever his family tried controlling the wedding, I got bothered because they were planning around themselves. They said that this isn't about me and my fiance, it's about their family, because their family is a big deal and this wedding was about them. Overall, they called me bridezilla to my face multiple times because I didn't like how they were controlling my wedding. Within those few months, I remembered why I broke up with my fiance the first time, so I broke up with him again. F that. Story 4. I'm a photographer. Prom moms are usually made up of a very select, particularly nasty group of booster club moms. I don't do work with schools anymore. It made me thousands of dollars a year, but frick, is it way worse than weddings. I went to a preppy, upper-middle-class high school, so pretty much everyone had prom moms, except me and a few others whose parents didn't make over $300,000 a year. I went with a friend to pick out her prom dress from a fancy formal wear store, and she took about 2.5 hours to pick out a dress. I was exhausted just watching her, and her mom was living for it. In the end, she settled on a dress that I thought was not flattering to her body type, that kind of made her look naked in certain lighting because it was a pale pink. It was over $500. Oh, and also there was an entire prom dress planning Facebook page created every year for prom so that girls wouldn't buy the same dress or a similar dress. If you bought a dress, you had to post it on the page and hope to God some girl wouldn't say, "Scroll down, I already purchased a dress that's too similar. And since I posted first, you have to return it / buy a new dress." You can't even imagine how many fights that were on that page. Jesus. I bought my dress for $60 off eBay and resold it the day after prom. I'll never understand the logic of starting one's marriage with massive debt due to an overpriced wedding. The wedding market knows people will just keep throwing money at them, so prices keep going up. I really don't understand why people get offended if you don't want to get as drunk as they would like. Like, the F do you care if I'm drunk or not? Story 5. According to my mother-in-law, I'm the bridezilla. We had a max limit of 36 people, including ourselves and my son. My mother-in-law gave me a guest list, which included, you guessed it, 36 names. She assured me that not everyone would come, but that they would be very $appreciative of the invite. I felt gross by that and left the decision up to my husband since it was his family. Needless to say, they all got invites. I had asked for RSVPs to be given a few months before the wedding. Since the mother-in-law had used up all of the guest list, I had greatly reduced my side of the guest list to 4 people, with some on hold until I knew the exact numbers. I finally lost it 2 weeks before the wedding when I still didn't have RSVPs. She said she would work on it and get back to me. A week before the wedding, she said one family also needed to bring 9 other people because they were going on a family trip and our town was on the way, so they would all be here anyway. I flat out said no and called her out on the BS. I cut off the guest list, said that I was inviting the rest of my guest list, and that whoever hadn't RSVP'd didn't get a chair or plate. Right up to the day of the wedding, they were making changes. We got married at a Chinese buffet so that it would be the simplest planning, and everyone would have something that they liked to eat. My dress was $40 off Amazon, my flowers were $20 from Costco. We had a Dairy Queen ice cream cake for the wedding cake, yet she still makes it out that I was the bridezilla. Story 6. I have performed a few ceremonies that came about because things fell through for whatever reason, only one of which I had to walk away from. I had received a call from my sister-in-law that one of her friends was supposed to get married and the priest had passed away the week before. They didn't want to change the date and move anything, so they asked if she knew anyone who could help out. I said, sure, when's the wedding? It was supposed to be in an hour. Okay, I was on my way home from work where I had finished up an important meeting. I miss meeting in person, and was reasonably well dressed, so I called home to say I was going to be late. When I arrived, the happy couple had looked at me and asked if I had proper priest's vestments. No, I don't. And if I did, I would probably not be carrying them in my car. The bride had asked if I was able to go buy some and come back. I told her that I wouldn't begin to know where to buy something like that. The groom then told me that if I can't even try, then maybe I should leave. I did. My sister-in-law told me that they cornered a priest at the church and told him he had to marry them, or they would sue the church for a breach of contract, and that it was the moral thing to do. They divorced 9 months later when her surprise baby was a different ethnicity than he was. Didn't help that he had a side piece as well. Story 7. My mom was a mother of the bridezilla. She's an alright lady generally, with her annoying habits here and there, but dang, woman cried because we refused to have a receiving line. We got married in our backyard. The reception was on the other side of the yard. Why the poop would we have a receiving line? She was beside herself for the better part of an entire year, worrying what we would do if it rained. We had a giant tent and ordered like 20 umbrellas. She also had a cow that the hem of her dress had gotten pulled loose by the ridiculous rhinestone stilettos she chose to wear to a wedding in a yard, on grass. I told my maid of honor to get her some duct tape, and my mother again cried her eyes out. To this day, she complains about the fabric runner we used for the aisle because her heels dug into it, saying how silly of a choice that was. Everyone in the wedding party was aware of it, and wore wedges or flats, but she snorted that that wasn't elegant. She loathed that I wore ballet flats. She was also appalled that our rehearsal dinner, which was at our home, since that's where our wedding was, consisted of takeout from our favorite local pizza and sandwich place, and the rehearsal itself was all of 10 minutes. She decried it for being borderline trashy. Thankfully, following the ceremony, my brother gave her a joint and all was well and happy for the party thereafter. Brother of the Year. Honestly, it's your party/day, not hers. You do you. Story 8. Not a bridezilla, but a mother-in-lawzilla. Wife wanted a regular-sized wedding, nothing fancy, at a historic venue she loved. We had planned for about 100 guests at most, and we would do a lot of the work. Mother-in-law started to feel pressure about having to invite tons of people. In-laws are loaded and social butterflies. Change the venue, change the photographer, etc. I didn't give a crap since it was all to make my wife happy, and I did my best to adjust. Finally, one day about 2 months before the wedding, my wife had a breakdown, crying because all the changes and bullcrap from the mother-in-law. Told my wife I would handle the mother-in-law from now on. Called mother-in-law and read her the riot act and told her to cool her jets, or we would just get a courtroom wedding and forget about the religious wedding. Huge deal to the family. She fought me for weeks. Father-in-law fought me. Brother-in-laws fought me. Told them all to pound sand. We had our original wedding. I was folding invitations and favors the night before until 3 a.m. But by God, we got it done. Of course, mother-in-law still changed the DJ and photographers without me noticing, so we had completely wrong music, and we have yet to see the pictures, 16 years later, and we have minimal contact with the family. Story 9. My brother married a bridezilla. She yelled at my mother the day of for asking her where she wanted certain decorations at the reception site. There wasn't a written plan, so my mom had nothing to go off of. Never thanked my parents for financially contributing to the wedding. Accused a bridesmaid of trying to upstage her by getting a spray tan before the wedding. My brother wanted me to be in the wedding party, but she told him to his face that I was too pretty to be in the wedding party, and all of her bridesmaids had to be less attractive than her. Stole my sister-in-law's jacket in the middle of the reception, literally took it off her back, because one of the bridesmaids was cold. It was a night reception in the spring. The girl should have brought a jacket. The list goes on. Well, they got divorced about a year later because apparently her demanding attitude carried over into the marriage. Needless to say, the rest of the family had a little party when we heard about the divorce. Story 10. I'm a bride-to-be, and the way people are encouraging some bridezilla behavior from me is something I never expected. I got incredibly lucky and found the exact wedding dress I wanted at Goodwill in my size with the tags on. And people are like, shh, don't tell people. Tell them you got it for $1,000. Brag about how much you got it for. Yeah, no, I'm proud that I found it thrifting. Also, for brides on a budget, this is where I found mine. Lots of great affordable options. shopgoodwill.com/wedding. Story 11. First wife was a bridezilla. During the honeymoon, she realized she was married and the wedding day was history. She wanted the big wedding, which she had, not the marriage. The next 2 years were hell until she finally tapped out. I was young and stupid, and the thought of divorce never crossed my mind. I don't know why it didn't. I guess I just assumed I'd be miserable the rest of my life. When she told me she was leaving, it felt as if the weight of the world was off of my shoulders. On a happy note, her parents were still paying off the wedding when we divorced. That's what happens when you allow your daughter everything she wants, including 2 wedding dresses. Story 12. I didn't marry the bridezilla, but I had coordinated her wedding. We had a death in the family, 6-month-old baby, a few days prior to the wedding. I called the bride and told her the situation and said that my assistant would be stepping in for me so that I could attend the funeral. She told me to send my assistant to the funeral and that I had better be at her wedding. I told her I would be sending her a refund and that no one would be coming to her wedding. The groom ended up leaving her after this whole thing went down. Suffice to say, he really dodged a bullet there. Story 13. I married a groomzilla, bent over backwards to make the wedding add magic as he wanted. I would have been happy in someone's backyard with a potluck. He admitted in couples counseling 7 years later that he never really wanted to marry me so much as he wanted a huge show and party. Everyone liked and approved of me, so he wanted them all to see he was making a good choice and be envious. He wanted them to be proud of him. We used up most of the money I got from a car accident settlement. Could have put in a down payment in a small house. He asked for divorce in 2020. Story 14. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. My wife and I eloped a few months before our wedding and kept it mostly a secret. Then, on the day of, we could just focus on having an awesome party for us and our friends. Our pastor canceled the day after standing up for the rehearsal. My wife checked into the hotel the morning of, and the lady asked, lady at counter, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Wife jokingly, yes, pastor. Lady at counter, our omelet chef is ordained. Hey, Tony, are you busy tonight? Tony, no. Wife, okay. Story 15. She stabbed me in the thigh during the meal at our wedding, still in prison. This story needs more than 2 sentences, even though they are admirably concise. Story 16. Got into a huge fight about broccoli on the honeymoon. All my fault, of course. I knew then it was a mistake. Toughed it out for 2 more years of abuse before I left. So glad that I did. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.